Hey guys, I'm thrilled to welcome to the podcast Chris Rufo. He's a writer, filmmaker, an activist, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, also a contributing editor to the public policy magazine called City Journal. We're going to be talking about his book, America's Cultural Revolution. You can follow him on Twitter at RealChrisRufo, R-U-F-O. Hey, welcome to the podcast. Really appreciate you joining me. This topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory, a really important issue. And of course, in its own way, the Supreme Court recently weighed in, striking down affirmative action. Now, not striking down affirmative action as far as I can see in all of American society, which would have been an even better thing, but nevertheless, an important start by striking it down in university admissions. Can you talk about the importance of that ruling? And there are some people who also say, well, the court left a little bit of a loophole for colleges to be able to sort of dodge their way through. Do you think that that is right? What is your take on the significance of the recent court decision on racial preferences?
Well, I mean, overall, it's good news. It's moving in the right direction towards a system of colorblind equality rather than a racial spoils system, which is what our universities have been doing. But we should also be very cautious because in California, they have a statutory ban on affirmative action, but the universities have figured out all of these different workarounds and all of these more kind of subtle methods to have de facto affirmative action and admission. So I don't think that this is a case where you snap your fingers and the problem is solved. I think this is the beginning of a very long and hard fight, but a long and hard fight that has the side of the American people with us. People want colorblind equality. They want people treated equally as individuals, regardless of their ancestry. We do not have that in so many facets of our society. But I still think that this is a significant goal because it's for the first time at the Supreme Court level, turning the corner. So it's creating new opportunities that we should pursue legislatively. And of course, we should be bringing more cases to the courts to overturn, for example, disparate impact theory and other pillars of the affirmative action regime.
Is part of what you're saying that even if the Supreme Court makes a good decision, that's just the court? As long as the institutions of our society remain under sort of leftist control, they're going to try to find, so they might say, well, listen, we're not going to be asking whether you're black, but we're going to ask whether or not you're poor. And the idea here is that that socioeconomic status becomes a kind of surrogate for race, and they still want to get a diverse result, but they get it this way by disguising the strategic approach to it. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, and I think it's actually even worse than that because they're not even just saying let's substitute socioeconomic status. In many cases, they're saying we're not going to have a checkbox where you check your racial background, but we want in your personal statement to address in as detailed a way as possible what diversity and inclusion means to you, which is kind of a wink, wink, give us the information we want in a narrative form and we can get around the affirmative action ban. But I mean, it's also even more broadly, the point that you make is correct that, I reported on racial scapegoating in schools for about a year, looking at CRT, looking how schools were shaming, scapegoating, punishing people on the basis of race. And because it was from the left, because it was against the kind of European American majority in some of these school districts, it was totally permitted. They didn't stop doing it. They didn't feel any pressure. Whereas if you had it coming from the right, let's say, and it was against a group that was favored, which doesn't happen to that same degree, of course, in classes, it would be a civil rights violation, a case. It would be a whole brouhaha. And so the point is not to say, hey, let's pit one group against another. I think, not suggesting that at all. The point is to say, if we want to have a truly equal standard for everyone, we actually have to have more balance within our institutions, how they're governed, how policies are implemented, and then how we work together in the culture to say, hey, wait a minute, if we want true equality, it has to be equality for everyone, and we're going to draw a line, we're going to actually enforce that. Because without enforcement, you get very nice legislation in the law books, but very poor implementation out in the real world.
Chris, why do you think it is that the progressive white liberal is often at the forefront of bashing whiteness, calling for the elimination of whiteness. I mean, isn't it paradoxical? You might have thought that you'd have radical black activists who are pushing for this and reluctant white administrators going, well, okay, we'll concede on this point, but not on that point. But in fact, very often it's the white guys who are leading the charge.
Yeah, it's a really interesting psychological study. And I think that, something that I tried to do in the book was create these profiles of these folks and create a bit of a psychological analysis and to try to understand that the utopian impulse that they have, the idealistic impulse that they have originally starts to go through a process of disillusionment as those ideas fail, starts to go through a process of resentment as these folks see others succeed. And then they also are in a way introjecting some of these revolutionary ideas, knowing that they are kind of good white progressives. And then their own self-hatred becomes a marker of their own worth, their own spiritual enlightenment. And so you can never quite get there. So you see these folks that are really spinning. And to them, the self-loathing, the self-hatred, the guilt feelings that they're managing becomes, in essence, a kind of ascetic ideal or a spirituality. And I think it's obviously tremendously destructive. But nonetheless, it's something that is very powerful. As many of these folks have abandoned older spiritual traditions, these seem to come in and replace them.
Let's take a pause. When we come back, more with Chris Rufo, author of America's Cultural Revolution. It's MyPillow's 20th anniversary with over 80 million MyPillows sold. Wow. Mike Lindell at MyPillow wants to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history on his MyPillows. You can get a queen-size MyPillow for $19.98, regular price $69.98, just $10 more for a king size. You get deep discounts on all the MyPillow products, the bed sheets, MyPillow mattress toppers, the pet beds, the mattresses, the robes, the My Slippers, and so much more. This is the time to try out some of the other amazing products that you've had your eye on. Go to mypillow.com, use promo code Dinesh to get this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98, or you can call 800-876-0227. The offer comes with a 10-year warranty, a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. Once again, call 800-876-0227 or go to mypillow.com. Don't forget to use the promo code DINESH Dinesh.